Let me get you the real version instead. Jacob's Well has genuine, well-documented danger in history that doesn't need any invention. Good news. This real research changes things significantly. Kent Maupin, not Mopin, Mark Brashear, and Don Dibble's story are all real, well-documented historical events, published in Texas Monthly's serious, long-form journalism. I was right to flag the drone found them claim as fabricated, but the underlying human story is genuine. Here's the accurate script. On the night of September 9th, 1979, two young divers named Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear removed the tanks from their own backs, pushed them ahead through a passage barely wide enough for a human body, and disappeared into the deepest known chamber of Jacob's Well, a swimming hole in the Texas hill country that looks, from the surface, like paradise. They never came back. What happened next became one of the most harrowing rescue attempts in American cave diving history, ending with a professional rescue diver swallowing lake water in the dark, certain he was about to die, and surviving an injury doctors had never documented before. Decades later, that same passage is still down there, still unrecovered, and cave divers are still mapping a system that, by their own admission, keeps revealing more of itself the deeper they go. In the rolling hill country of central Texas, just northwest of the small town of Wimberley, Cypress Creek runs shallow and clear over limestone bedrock. In the middle of that creek sits a nearly circular opening about 12 feet across, dropping straight down into darkness. This is Jacob's Well, a natural artesian spring fed by the Trinity Aquifer, one of the most important groundwater systems in the American Southwest. The water holds a constant, cool temperature of roughly 68 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, and on any hot summer day, the site draws crowds of swimmers and tourists who leap from the surrounding limestone ledges into water so clear it looks almost unreal. What most of those swimmers never fully register is that they are jumping into the entrance of a genuine, extensive underwater cave system. According to survey work by the Jacob's Well Exploration Project, the cave's main conduit extends roughly 4,500 feet from the surface, reaching a maximum depth of about 137 feet, with a secondary passage extending a further 1,000 feet from where it branches off. For ordinary swimmers, the experience ends at the bottom of the first chamber, a sunlit room roughly 30 feet down. For cave divers, the first chamber is only the entrance to something considerably more serious. Jacob's Well carries a well-documented reputation among cave divers, and it is not an exaggerated one. According to Wikipedia's cited historical record and multiple journalistic investigations, the site has resulted in at least 9 confirmed fatalities. The cave's structure creates specific, genuinely dangerous features, a false exit in the third chamber that has misled and trapped divers, and an extremely narrow passage into the fourth chamber, requiring divers to remove their tanks and push them ahead in order to fit through it all. The floors of these deeper chambers are covered in a thick, powdery layer of accumulated limestone silt, and even a small disturbance, a single misplaced fin kick, can instantly transform perfectly clear water into a dense, opaque cloud, a phenomenon divers call a silt out. In that sudden blindness, a disoriented diver can lose track of their gauges, their dive partner, and any guideline back to the surface within seconds. The most documented and consequential tragedy in the well's history began just after midnight on September 9th, 1979. Kent Maupin, a 20-year-old assistant diving instructor from Pasadena, Texas, had come to Wimberley with a group of divers specifically because he wanted to push further into the well's final chamber than anyone had reliably confirmed reaching before. According to Texas Monthly's detailed historical account, Maupin already knew, going in, that 4 divers had previously drowned in that exact section of the cave. He brought along Mark Brashear, a 20-year-old student at San Jacinto College. That night, Maupin, Brashear, and several other divers descended together, reaching what cave divers called the final squeeze. At that point, without a safety line and without backup lights, Maupin removed his own tank, pushed it ahead of him, and backed into the narrow passage. Brashear followed, doing the same thing. According to eyewitness accounts recorded by Texas Monthly, another diver in the group, Joe Moy, had not been told this was the plan and was reportedly stunned to see Brashear disappearing into the tunnel ahead of him. Neither Maupin nor Brashear returned. The recovery effort that followed became one of the defining stories in Texas cave diving history. Don Dibble, a former Navy diver and widely respected rescue specialist, responded to the emergency call. According to the same Texas Monthly account, by the time Dibble arrived, other divers in the group had already made repeated attempts into the passage, with at least one diver claiming to have glimpsed what appeared to be bodies partially buried beneath shifting gravel, before that diver himself came down with decompression sickness from the repeated dives. Dibble made the call to wait until daylight rather than risk a night recovery in near zero visibility. The next morning, professional divers attempted to clear the unstable gravel choking the passage using small hand trowels, only to find that for every handful of material removed, more slid down from above to refill the space, an underwater environment behaving in effect like an hourglass that could never be fully drained. Eventually, Dibble made the decision to enter the passage himself. During the attempt, the loose gravel gave way and buried him up to his arms in total darkness, cutting off his ability to signal for help. According to the same historical account, in that moment, believing he was going to die, Dibble made the extraordinary decision to begin swallowing the surrounding water rather than continue fighting his own panic. A survival reflex, an involuntary convulsion, shifted his body just enough for his safety diver to locate him and get a spare air regulator into his mouth. Dibble survived the immediate entrapment, but the water and air he had swallowed under pressure caused severe complications as he ascended, resulting in a ruptured stomach and a resulting infection that very nearly killed him regardless. It stands, according to the Texas Monthly Investigation, as one of the most severe and unusual diving-related injuries ever documented. Despite the enormous effort that followed, including a commercial diving company brought in with industrial suction equipment to try clearing the unstable gravel bed, the passage proved impossible to safely clear. Every foot of material removed was replaced by more sliding down from above. After 12 days, the official search was called off. Kent Maupin and Mark Brasher's remains were never recovered, and the passage where they were lost has remained sealed and unentered since. The well itself was subsequently fitted with protective grating specifically to prevent further unauthorized diving into its most dangerous sections. The 1979 tragedy was not the only fatal incident associated with Jacob's Well. Historical records document a diver's remains being recovered from the well in 1981, and a separate well-documented fatality on November 23, 1983, when an experienced diver named Richard Patton, a member of an advanced diving class, drowned after taking a wrong turn deep in the cave system and running out of air, according to contemporaneous reporting in the Austin American-Statesman and the Dallas Morning News. Additional fatalities continued to occur into the 2000s, cementing the site's reputation, as one science outlet has described it, as one of the most dangerous diving spots in the world relative to its modest size and the number of visitors it attracts. The uncontrolled, informal diving culture that led to these tragedies eventually gave way to something more organized and considerably safer. According to the Jacobs Well Exploration Project's own published history, formal trained cave diving exploration of the site began in 2000, when members of the San Marcos Area Rescue Team partnered with the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association to attempt systematic mapping and video documentation of the cave. That initial effort was set aside by 2002, but divers Jimmy Price and Jeff Chance subsequently launched an independent, sustained exploration effort, spending months manually clearing accumulated rock and gravel to reestablish access to deeper sections of the cave, ultimately determining that the system continued for hundreds of feet beyond what had previously been documented. In 2007, this effort was formalized into the Jacobs Well Exploration Project, a coalition of volunteer, self-funded, highly trained cave divers operating with official authorization from the Hays County Parks Department. To date, JOEP has surveyed and mapped approximately 6,000 feet of passage across the cave's two principal conduits, confirming Jacobs Well as the longest cave in Hays County and the second longest fully submerged cave anywhere in Texas. Divers on this team are required to hold full cave, decompression, and ormoxic trimix certifications, reflecting just how technically demanding and genuinely hazardous this specific environment remains, even for highly experienced professionals operating with full modern equipment and institutional support. Beyond its diving history, Jacobs Well has become the center of a real ongoing environmental story with far broader implications than cave diving alone. The spring is fed by the Trinity Aquifer, and its flow rate has functioned for over a century as a visible indicator of that aquifer's overall health. Historical records note the spring's flow measured at 170 gallons per second back in 1924, discharging water several feet into the air above the surface. In more recent years, the flow has weakened dramatically. The well stopped flowing entirely during droughts, notably confirmed by regional reporting in 2000 and again in 2008, and it stopped flowing again in July 2022 due to a combination of severe drought conditions and increased groundwater pumping in the surrounding region. A 2023 Texas Monthly Investigation into the site's declining health, provocatively titled "Who's Killing Jacobs Well?", examined the mounting pressure regional development and water extraction are placing on the aquifer feeding one of the most iconic natural landmarks in the Texas Hill Country. The broader Trinity and Edwards aquifer systems that Jacobs Well connects to are also home to genuinely unique biology. The Texas blind salamander, found specifically in the nearby Edwards aquifer system, has evolved in total darkness to the point of losing its pigmentation entirely and no longer requiring functional eyes to navigate its environment. A striking, real example of how life adapts over deep time to conditions of total isolation from sunlight. The wider Jacobs Well Natural Area, an 81-acre site now managed by Hays County, supports a broader ecosystem of reptiles, amphibians, birds, and mammals along the banks, where the spring empties into Cypress Creek, alongside the specialized cave-adapted species living in the permanent darkness below. What actually happened at Jacob's Well doesn't need any embellishment to be genuinely disturbing. A 20-year-old diver's decision to push past a point 4 previous fatalities had already marked as lethal, a friend who followed him into the dark without hesitation, and a professional rescue diver who came within seconds of becoming the well's next victim, swallowing water in total darkness because he believed there was no other way out, are all real, documented events confirmed by contemporary news reporting and detailed long-form journalism. Kent Maupin and Mark Brasher remain in that passage today in a recovery effort that was ultimately deemed impossible to complete safely. And the cave itself has continued to reveal more of its true scale ever since, not through any dramatic single discovery, but through 2 decades of patient, highly trained, properly authorized cave divers slowly extending the map, foot by foot, through one of the most technically demanding underwater environments in the United States. Jacob's Well remains exactly what it has always been, a genuine natural wonder, a critical water source for an entire region, and one of the most quietly dangerous places a person can choose to enter in the entire state of Texas.